What exactly is a neuroscientist? A neuroscientist is anyone who essentially just studies how the brain functions. Neuroscientists are also very interested in understanding how does the brain store memory? Why does the body need sleep? What happens to the brain during sleep? Attraction. What causes certain people to be attracted to others? And more specifically to my line of research, how is it that the brains differ between males and females, and what are the implications for that on behavior?
Dr. Vini and I are specifically behavioral neuroendocrinologists, so we thought we'd spend a minute describing what a behavioral neuroendocrinologist is. So of course we're interested in the brain, and specifically we're interested in how hormones are involved in the regulation of behavior. So remember that hormones are those chemicals that are produced in endocrine cells in your body and in neurosecretory cells in your brain, and they're making these chemicals that are going throughout your body, and they're affecting physiology and behavior. There are non-hormones that are affecting factors, so things like changes in gene expression, and then we also have environment that's interacting as well. So in your biology classes, you've probably had discussions on nature versus nurture, and so our work is interested in that as well. How much of the component that's involved in the hormonal regulation of behavior is based on the genetics of the individual, and then how much of that is based on environmental conditions, and then how are the genes and environment interacting with one another to get the full repertoire of behaviors that animals engage in.
In my laboratory, the animal model of choice is the Australian zebrafinch. We've got two zebrafinches. The picture on the left is of an adult male zebrafinch, and on the right we see an adult female zebrafinch. And almost immediately you should be able to tell that males and females look different. But more importantly than the physical characteristics or plumage, we're more interested in how the brain develops differently between these two sexes. The first thing you should know is that male and female zebrafinches differ in a very important behavior, and that behavior is singing. So in this particular species, males utilize song as a way to both attract and court females, and also to defend their territory from other males. On the left-hand side are our sections from a male, and on the right-hand side are sections from a female. And we know from about 30+ years of research that there are certain regions of the brain that have to connect to one another in order for a male to be able to both learn and produce song. So just to show you a few representative sections, you'll see an area of the brain which has the abbreviation area RA. Okay, so this is what RA looks like in a male, and if we look at that same area in the female, you will notice that it's much smaller. Okay, the same thing can be said for area HVC, which is much larger in the male and much smaller in the female. Okay, and lastly, I want to draw your attention to area X, which is an important region of the male brain for learning song, and you can see that it's a very nicely defined region in males, and in females that region is completely absent. Now, the whole idea that factors other than hormones are important for the development of the brain become very apparent and obvious to us when we examine this particular model. Another example of a zebrafinch, but this zebrafinch is a little bit different than the one I showed you before. You can see that this bird is essentially split right down the middle. The right side of the bird is phenotypically male, and the left side of the bird is phenotypically female. Well, if the outside of the bird looks half male and female, what does the actual brain look like? What we actually are looking at is the expression of genes that are specific to both the male sex chromosomes and the female sex chromosomes. So at the top panel here, we are looking at the expression of genes which are primarily in females, or actually only in females, and you can see from this diagram that the expression of those female sex chromosomes are consistent with the left-hand side of the bird's brain.
So while Dr. Vini is really interested in sexual dimorphisms between males and females, my interests are really on two specific hormones, the hormone oxytocin and the hormone vasopressin. The hormone oxytocin you might be familiar with. It's often referred to as the hormone of love. So I utilize knockout mice to answer my behavioral questions. So what we have here are a couple of images of what actually these animals look like in their brains in terms of something like vasopressin receptors. So remember that a hormone is acting as a ligand, kind of like the idea of a lock and a key, and that ligand is going to fit into some sort of binding pocket on a receptor, and then that's going to cause a cellular cascade. On the left-hand side is a normal mouse brain, so wherever it is dark is a place that a vasopressin receptor is present and that hormone can bind to. On the right-hand side is a knockout animal, and you can see there's really nothing to see there, okay? And that suggests that the gene is in fact absent in these animals. While I'm very interested in where these receptors are being made and where these hormones are being made, I'm also interested in behavior, since we're behavioral neuroendocrinologists. And so the types of behaviors that I look at are things like aggressive behavior, because actually learning about aggression in mice can tell us about aggression in humans, since many of the hormones and receptors that are involved in the regulation of human behavior are very similar across vertebrate species. The overall objective of our work is to really begin to understand behavior in humans, and specifically how changes in behavior can affect possibly something like mental health. And so mental health is a huge umbrella concept. There's lots of diseases and disorders, neurodevelopmental, neuropsychiatric, that fall under mental health. But some of the things that we can begin to address in our research are how hormones may contribute to something like autism or schizophrenia, and even measures of things like anxiety or depression.
In order to follow this career, there's a certain amount of training that's necessary. So typically, after your completion of high school, you will go to a university where you will complete an undergraduate degree, primarily in biology or psychology. And following your completion of your bachelor's degree, you will then go on to graduate school where you will earn your doctorate or PhD. And this can take an additional 5 to 7 years beyond your undergraduate degree. And then in order to become an actual professor or to actually teach biology or neuroscience, postdoctoral training is often necessary. So this is your opportunity to go out, work in a lab, and increase your knowledge of additional skills and techniques that you'll eventually be using in your own laboratory to answer your own personal questions about neuroscience.
The two of us are neuroscientists at Kent State University. In addition to ourselves, we have a variety of other neuroscientists. We have circadian biologists, and so these are researchers that study rhythms and behavior that are about a day in length, things like your sleep-wake cycle. We also have scientists that study neurodegenerative diseases, specifically muscular dystrophy, for instance. So we have a nice group at Kent State that are studying different aspects of neuroscience, and specifically, our interest, behavioral neuroscience, is what we're particularly excited about.